Hi there, and thanks for joining us today. We are glad to welcome you to week 6 of the diabetes webinar series. Today we're going to be going through a grocery store tour and some other tips for adopting a healthy lifestyle. Again, my name is Lindsay Moran. I'm the registered dietitian here at Connect Care 3. And joining me today, we have Phil Thompson.
Hi everyone, I'm Phil. I'm one of the certified health coaches here at Connect Care 3. Just to recap a little bit from last week. Last week we talked about vitamins, the importance of vitamins. We try to get them through whole foods as much as we can, but if you do go a multivitamin route or a supplement route, you want to look for that USP brand. We talked about the importance of foot health and oral health, and then we talked a lot about the importance of exercise when you have diabetes and certain types of exercise to really help manage that blood glucose. Today, we're going to talk more about a grocery store tour and adopting a healthy lifestyle.
So diving in, our objectives for this week will be to, number 1, identify healthful options to choose in the grocery store. Number 2, further understand how to read nutrition facts labels. We talked about that a little bit back in week 3, but we're going to revisit that today. Number 3, we're going to practice again building some healthy meals and snacks with the foods that we're going through today. And number 4, again, we're going to revisit that importance of setting SMART goals as we wrap up this 6-week series here today. So we'll get started now with the grocery store tour. So everyone is familiar with a grocery store. We have all the different areas, starting with produce, going through the deli, meat and seafood section, eggs, dairy, packaged foods, canned foods. So here's a little overview, and we're going to be going through each of these areas today in the presentation. But before we begin, I want to take time again to just review the nutrition facts label, which again, we did talk a lot about back in week 3, but just some key things to think about as we're going through the grocery store. Number 1, looking in this green section here on the nutrition facts label, we want to be paying attention to serving sizes. So remember that the serving size listed on the food label might be different from the serving size that you're planning to eat. If you eat twice the serving size listed on the label, you also need to double the calories, fat, carbohydrates, and all the other nutrients listed on the label. So keep that in mind. Also, as we're looking at products, be aware again of their total fat intake, their sodium intake, and their total content, and their total carb content. Beware of items that are labeled fat-free. Remember that fat-free foods might sound like a good option, but sometimes they might have more carbohydrates or other unwanted ingredients than their regular counterparts. So that becomes really important, again, when we're trying to manage diabetes, always to be looking for that total carbohydrate on the package and comparing your different food options. Remember as well, if your meal plan is based on carbohydrate counting, that food labels become an essential tool. You want to, again, be looking at your total carbohydrates and not just the sugar on the label. Evaluate the grams of total carbs, which will include the sugar, such as the added sugars, your complex carbs, and your fiber, rather than just that one column of sugars. If you focus on just the sugar content, you might miss out on nutritious foods that are naturally higher in sugar, like fruit or milk. And you might overdo it with foods that have no natural or added sugar, but plenty of other carbohydrates, such as certain cereals or grains. And remember, don't miss out on high fiber foods. Pay special attention to these high fiber foods, specifically foods with 3 or more grams of fiber per serving. So it's also important to understand what food packaging claims mean so that you can make the best decisions for you and your family. According to the FDA, there are 3 categories of claims that can be used on food and dietary supplement labels. We have nutrient content claims, which describe the amount of nutrients in a product using the terms like free, high, or low. We also have health claims that might describe the relationship between a food and a disease or a health-related condition. And finally, there are structure or function claims, which describe the effect a nutrient has on a physiological function. For example, saying that calcium builds strong bones, or that fiber might help keep your maintain bowel regularity. So going through a couple of these claims that you might see on some of your food labels, or your food packages rather. Starting with low. The claim low can be used on many food labels. You might see low fat or low sodium. It's important to remember though that doesn't necessarily mean that there is none of that item or that nutrient in the product. Just means there is a lower amount. For example, the low fat claim means there are 3 grams of fat or less per serving. Low sodium means that there's 140 milligrams or less per serving. And low calorie means that there are 40 calories or less per serving. Free is often used to express when a particular food element is not included in the processing. Again, you might see foods that are sugar-free, meaning they have less than half a gram of sugar per serving. You might see fat-free items with less than half gram of fat per serving. But again, remember to look at the big picture. What other nutrients are found in that food, and compare it to its counterpart or other options as well. Other claims that you might find are things like reduced or less. So in terms of like reduced calorie or reduced sodium, this usually means that the product has at least 25% less of the product than its regular, than a regular option. You might also see things that say good source or an excellent source of a nutrient. A good source is if one serving of food contains 10 to 19% of the daily value of a particular nutrient, and an excellent source is anything that's greater than 20% of the daily value. So again, just going back to sugar and carbohydrates, since that's what we like to focus on here with diabetes. Sugar-free doesn't mean that it's carbohydrate-free. Sugar-free foods may play a role in your diabetes diet, but remember that it's equally important to consider carbohydrates as well. When you're choosing between standard products and their sugar-free counterparts, remember to compare the food labels. If the sugar-free product has noticeably fewer carbs, it might be the better choice. But if there's little difference in carbohydrate grams overall, let the taste or the price be your guide instead. And again, remember that the label no sugar added does not necessarily mean that there's no sugar at all or no carbs in the food as well. Refer back to that nutrition label whenever you're unsure. All right, so now we've reviewed a little bit about the nutrition label and food packaging claims. So we're going to move on into the first section of our grocery store tour today, and that is the fresh produce section. So as we mentioned in previous presentations, it's important to strive for an adequate intake of fruits and vegetables each and every day. Be sure to choose a variety of colorful fresh fruits and veggies to be sure that you are consuming a great variety of vitamins and minerals. Think of ways you can add fruits and vegetables to your meals and snacks throughout the week. Maybe you'll choose baby carrots and hummus, or apple slices with nut butter. Maybe you'll choose green beans as a part of dinner one night. The options are endless. So here are some tips. First off, make it easy. All too often, I hear that people are steering away from fresh fruits and vegetables due to lack of time to prepare. In many stores these days, however, you can find produce items that are pre-washed or even pre-chopped. So all you have to do is throw them in a pan or in the oven and cook. You might also find fresh veggies washed and prepared in microwavable bags. I see a lot of times now there are like fresh green beans, fresh Brussels sprouts. All you have to do is kind of pierce the bag, throw it in the microwave for a few minutes, and you've got a vegetable ready in, under 5 minutes. All you got to do is add some seasoning if you'd like a little bit extra pizzazz. Some of my favorites are spiralized zucchini or butternut squash that can be easily sauteed and used to replace or mix with pasta for a lower carb dish. Again, another is Brussels sprouts, which require about 5 minutes in the microwave and then are ready to serve. Look around the produce section of your favorite store the next time you're out shopping. What items are available that might make it easier for you to consume more produce? So seasonal food is produce that is purchased and consumed around the time that it is harvested. To achieve optimal flavor and the best value for your produce, look for items that are in season. Seasonal produce is usually harvested at its peak ripeness, so it will likely have a much better flavor. Also, they're likely more fresh as they do not require long distances to travel and transport. Finally, you'll usually find that in-season produce is often much more reasonably priced. And who isn't trying to save money whenever possible? Another question that I often get is whether or not you should be looking for items that are organic or not in the produce section. So here are the facts. According to the USDA, the pesticide residues on fruits and vegetables are well below the safety levels set by the Environmental Protection Agency and pose little to no risk. It's important to note that the food grown in the United States is among the safest in the world, and it actually can be more harmful to create fear around our produce, as it makes people less likely to buy them and eat these very beneficial, nutrient-dense foods. Most people in the United States are falling short of the recommended daily intake for fruits and vegetables, and it's better to be meeting those daily fruit and vegetable goals than to be falling short because we're trying to afford only organic products or, steer clear of the much more affordable conventional products. It's really up to consumers to decide whether to purchase conventionally grown or organically grown produce. But if you are set on choosing organic options, however, and have the means to do so, the Environmental Working Group's yearly Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 lists might be interesting to take a look at. Each year, the Environmental Working Group publishes these lists of fruit and vegetables. They note that those on the Dirty Dozen list may contain elevated levels of some pesticides. If you are worried about consuming these residual pesticides, these lists are a good resource to guide your shopping decisions. The Clean 15 list serves as a list of foods that you can save some money on the other hand by not buying organic, as these often have very low levels of pesticides found. The big picture overall, though, is again, it's most beneficial to just be getting in these fruits and vegetables, organic or not. Move on next to the deli section. So when approaching the deli area of the grocery store, your best choices are turkey or chicken breast. You might also choose roast beef or lean cuts of ham, but be sure to look for low sodium options whenever they're available. Be wary of high sodium deli meats and those with visual fat around and throughout the meat, also called marbling. These high fat items such as salami, pressed ham, and bologna are really high in saturated fat, sodium, and calories, so should definitely be consumed in moderation. Also be mindful in the deli section of a lot of the pre-made salads like tuna, chicken salad, macaroni salad. They're typically, again, really high in calories, fat, and sodium, and you might be better off making your own if you're really interested in choosing an item like that. Again, be mindful to avoid processed cheese if you're able to. Some better options might be reduced fat cheeses such as Alpine lace or Swiss cheese. Move on next to meat and seafood. So the meat and seafood department can certainly be an overwhelming one as there are just so many options. What's important to remember here is that it is best to look for lean options whenever possible. Think chicken, turkey, fish, and shellfish. If you're looking to incorporate red meat into your weekly meal plan, look for lower fat options such as flank steak, London broil, or pork tenderloin. When choosing ground meats, look for the leanest options of 93% lean and 7% fat whenever possible. Or you could try using ground turkey breast or ground chicken breast instead for a lower fat option. Once you add in all of your seasonings, you can hardly tell the difference between a ground turkey and a ground beef dish. For example, I often use ground turkey breast to make tacos, meatballs, or hamburgers in my house. So small changes like these that can make a big difference. Finally, no matter what items you choose in this department, be sure to choose lean cooking methods once you get home to prepare your foods. Try roasting, grilling, baking, or sauteing even, and avoid frying whenever possible. Moving to the back corner of the store here to the eggs and dairy section. So when we look at dairy, it's important to remember again that lower fat choices such as skim milk or 1% are going to be lower in that saturated fat. Alternative milks such as Simply Smart or Fairlife, which are ultra filtrated, might also improve the taste and tolerance of low fat or fat free milk. If you ever find that milk is giving you a little bit of an upset stomach, or you might suspect you have a little intolerance, sometimes these ultra filtrated milks might be better tolerated. They also are a bit higher in protein and a bit lower in sugar. So something to consider. You definitely don't have to choose these milks, but you might give them a try. If you're looking for yogurts, it's always best to look for low-fat or non-fat yogurts with no sugar added if possible. A big fan of plain yogurt and adding your own fruit or granola or nuts to spice it up a little bit. If, however, you really can't get used to that plain yogurt taste and texture, you can look for some of the flavored yogurts. Some that are lower in sugar are Oikos 000 or the Chobani Less Sugar brand. Some of my favorite other yogurt brands are Faye, which is spelled Fage, or Siggy's. Again, that plain is always preferred, but you can do whatever works best for you. And lastly, we get to cheese. Remember again to look for reduced fat options when possible. Again, cheese is a source of that saturated fat that we want to make sure we're not overdoing it on. So when we can find lower fat options, we want to take them as long as we're not sacrificing too much taste. But I find for the most part that the lower fat cheeses are very comparable to their regular counterparts. We'll round the bend now into frozen foods, which are really convenient. So frozen produce allows you to prepare a wider variety of fruits and vegetables with very little effort and makes it easier for you to get the daily recommended intake of these foods. Frozen produce options are typically very budget friendly. They last significantly longer than their fresh counterparts and are a quick and convenient way to incorporate a greater intake of the nutrients that come from our produce foods. Studies have shown that most frozen foods are just as rich in nutrients as fresh, and sometimes even more so, as they're usually harvested and frozen right at their peak ripeness. Unsure of where to incorporate frozen produce in your diet? Here are a few tips. Use frozen fruits to add to a smoothie or yogurt parfait, top your cereal, maybe mix with cottage cheese, or even add to a favorite muffin recipe for added nutrition and flavor. You can use frozen vegetables to mix into your morning omelet, create a quick stir fry for dinner, or to create a simple side dish to add to any meal. When looking for frozen produce, be sure to take a look at the ingredient list. Beware of added seasonings or sauces that might be lurking. These can add a significant amount of calories, saturated fat, sodium, and even sugars. So it's best to choose items that solely contain the fruit or vegetable that you are looking for on that ingredient list. In the frozen food section, you'll also find frozen pre-prepared meals. Although these are not something I would typically recommend to consume regularly, they can be a part of your diet in moderation. We all have those busy days where the only way we're getting dinner on the table is if it's a frozen meal, and that can be okay sometimes. Take time to look at the label. Again, beware of high levels of sodium, saturated fats, and sugar. Remember to use your percent daily value 5 and 20 rule to help you identify some of the best choices. You also want to choose a meal option that is balanced with a protein, a non-starchy vegetable, and a starch or a grain. Some brands like Healthy Choice and Lean Cuisine have a variety of options that you might find enjoyable, again, in moderation. All right, we move now to the center of the store for our packaged foods. So don't fear the center aisles of the grocery store. Some of our kitchen staples are packaged foods, and that's okay. Look for options such as whole wheat pasta, brown rice, quinoa, or unsweetened oatmeal for high fiber and healthy carbohydrate choices. Be mindful of condiments, as oftentimes they have lots of added sugar. You might look for reduced sugar options when possible, especially for ketchup and barbecue sauces. Or just be mindful of your portion sizes here. Next, remember that salad dressing and marinades often have extra sodium, so be mindful of what you choose and be sure to stick to an appropriate portion size yet again. Be sure to also check out all of the herbs and spices in the center of the store. There are so many ways to season your food without adding salt and sugar. Look for items like garlic powder, onion powder, rosemary, thyme, chili powder. The options are endless, and you can create a variety of different combinations to season all of your food and really give it that flavor you're looking for. In the packaged food section of the store, you'll also find several of your favorite snack items that are more than likely, again, not the healthiest choices. Explore the aisles and look for options that are lower in fat and higher in other nutrients like fiber. For example, you might try Boom Chicka Pop's unbuttered popcorn or the Vienna brand roasted chickpeas. Maybe unsalted nuts and seeds will make up your next snack. One thing I would say to use caution with is choosing granola bars or protein bars, as sometimes they can be very high in carbohydrates and added sugar. So you really want to be sure you're reading the label when you're making these choices. Remember that we're going back to our carbohydrate counting tips, that about 15 grams of carbohydrates equals one of those carbohydrate choices if you are using carb counting to help you with your diabetes planning. So again, always look at the total carbs that are listed on the label and try to look for an item that has less than 8 to 10 grams of added sugar if possible on these bars. Again, a bar with higher fiber content, greater than 3 grams, is going to be best, and a good source of protein. We'll move down the aisle a bit more to canned foods next. So canned foods, similarly to frozen foods, are very convenient and affordable. They can help us to increase our intake of fruits and vegetables that we might not be able to get if we're relying solely on fresh produce all year round. It is important to remember, though, oftentimes these canned products are really high in salt and even possibly added sugar. So always look for the no salt added label on your canned goods, or reduced sodium, reduced sugar, so on and so forth. And again, be sure to read those labels. When you're looking at canned fruits, try to avoid fruit that's canned in syrup. Look for some that's canned in water if possible, or fresh fruit juice. You might choose to use canned tomatoes to add to a chili or pasta dish, canned beans to add fiber and plant-based protein to a salad, or maybe mixed into a chili or a taco meat of some sort. Also think of things like canned tuna for convenient, healthy fat and lean protein. Again, look for that's canned in water if possible. And you might even find not necessarily canned, but the tuna pouches these days that are very convenient, eliminate the need to drain out your tuna, and you can kind of eat it right out of the pouch for another lean snack or component to a meal. I'm going to let Phil take over now for a couple slides as we go over bread.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about bread. When it comes to bread, you want to choose 100% whole wheat or whole grain whenever possible. Now, what's important there is to make sure you look at the ingredients in the back, and you want one of those first ingredients to say 100% whole wheat on it. If it says enriched, it typically means it's white bread with a wheat flavor, and you lose out a lot of the valuable nutrients. And so you want to stick with anything that says 100% whole wheat, either on the ingredients or sometimes they'll say it right on the front of the package. I'll look for high fiber options, so anything greater than 3 grams per serving. And check the label, of course, for serving size and total carbohydrates. Another option, you might look in the organic section in one of the fridges, is Ezekiel bread. It's a sprouted grain, lots of different variations. It's very good. It's a little dry by itself, but typically I find if you toast it, it works really, really well. But any of those options would be good options. Next, we'll talk about healthy fats. So oils like canola and olive oils are healthy options. Coconut oil is also a good option. Nuts and different nut butters are good options. Something to be a little cautious with. They tend to get high in calories. It's a very sneaky way of adding too many calories at times. I mean, growing up, I used to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I didn't realize how much peanut butter I was using because my sandwiches used to look like these look like pierogies. They'd be so loaded in the middle. So something to be mindful of. Other healthy fat options, avocados are a great option. Nuts, great option. But again, they get sneaky in terms of amounts too with calories. You want to try to measure those out and try to keep to particular serving sizes. Olives, hummus, and salmon. And going back to oils, you might want to think about what you're cooking and what oils to use. They have different smoke points, so a lot of them don't do well with high heat. Kind of just burn really quickly, and then also like flavor profiles. I'm a big fan of cooking with coconut oil, but only certain things like fish. Like we have on there salmon, a really good one to have salmon a few times a week, but you wouldn't want to use coconut oil to make eggs. It kind of gives it a slight coconut taste, and it does not taste great.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. So that kind of wraps up our tour of the grocery store. We learned a lot of different things there. And so I want to bring things back to our goal setting, our SMART goals that you've heard us talk about over the past 6 weeks. And, you've learned how important it is to take the time, write down your goals, set these specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely goals for yourself to help keep yourself moving in the right direction as you make these healthy lifestyle changes. So again, I just want to challenge you all today to take the time, think about what we've learned over the past 6 weeks, and write down at least one goal. What can you do right now to make yourself even healthier, over the next week, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month? How can you build upon these goals? Remember to be really specific. Again, write that goal down and see where it takes you. And of course, if you need any help, we're here to support you with whatever goal you might be setting for yourself. So again, kind of elaborating on that, some next steps we have moving forward. Think of reviewing your notes from the previous presentations. What questions do you have? Feel free to reach out if you do have any questions or contact the Connect Care 3 Chronic Disease Management team. Again, strive to maintain your blood sugar levels within the target range. Try to plan at least 1 to 2 well-balanced meals and snacks for the upcoming week. Can you reach 1 to 2? Maybe for you, 3 to 4 would be a more reasonable goal. Think about making a grocery list and planning your next trip to the store using some tips that you learned today. And finally, be sure to enroll in the chronic disease management program here at Connect Care 3. We're happy to help you. So next, I have a fun little surprise for everyone. We will be raffling off a $25 gift card to your preferred grocery store to anyone who has registered for our diabetes webinar series here. So we do have a list of all the registrants, and we will be randomly selecting a winner to go home or to receive a $25 gift card to the grocery store of their choice. So stay tuned. We will be sending out the winner. We will email the winner as soon as it is drawn. Again, we want to thank you so much for your time today and over the past 6 weeks. We hope you've learned something valuable from your time spent with us. And we encourage you to reach out to Connect Care 3 if you are interested in enrolling in the chronic disease management program, or if you have any other questions or concerns. You can contact us using the phone number or email address above. And again, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to hopefully working with you again in the future. Thank you.